It was supposed to be the happiest day of the year on New Geneva. The human colony settled deep in the Andromeda sector, where the sky shimmered with two suns and the wind always carried the sweet scent of blossom trees. Every solar cycle, the people celebrated the Festival of Light, honoring the colony's founding and the peace that had lasted for decades. Children wore glowing ribbons, families danced under floating lanterns, and music echoed across the wide-open field near the edge of the forest, which, although beautiful, had always been treated with quiet respect. Kara Langley, a bright and curious 7-year-old, had been running through the crowd with laughter in her voice and stardust glitter in her dark hair. She had just won a piece of blue sugar crystal candy and was looking for her mother, weaving between tall adults and bouncing lights, but within moments she was gone. At first, no one noticed. It wasn't unusual for children to play near the trees, and Kara was known for hiding in strange places. But when 15 minutes passed and her name echoed unanswered across the meadow, her mother's voice cracked with panic. A search party formed quickly. Drones flew overhead, scanning the trees. Soldiers spread out in pairs. Every tent, hovercart, and booth was checked. Her name kept being called, growing louder, more desperate. And then, a buzz came from one of the perimeter drones. Commander Elias Rise, head of planetary defense and a man not easily rattled, reviewed the grainy footage in silence. The camera caught a blur, a towering figure, insect-like in form, with limbs that shimmered as if bending light around them, standing at the tree line. In its arms, unmistakably, was Kara. There was no sound. The creature looked back at the drone for just 1 second. No eyes could be seen, no face, but the sense of presence was chilling. Then it stepped backward into the shadows, and the child was gone. The Colony Council was immediately called into emergency session. For years, they had believed the planet was uninhabited by intelligent life. Scans had shown no cities, no known threats, only ruins buried deep in the jungle ruins the science team had labeled dead architecture, relics of a long-extinct species. But now questions surfaced like smoke. Had something survived? Had it been watching them all along? Was this an attack or something else? Commander Rise ordered a lockdown of the colony's outer perimeter and organized a tracking squad to enter the forest at dawn. His instincts told him this wasn't a simple abduction. Something about the alien's body language, its careful movements, and how Kara hadn't appeared to struggle. It didn't fit the pattern of a predator. That night, another child disappeared, a 9-year-old boy named Ren from the far west farming sector. There had been no screams, no alarms, just an open window and a set of small footprints leading to the trees. This time, no drone caught the act. But the message was clear. It was not a one-time incident. Fear began to spread, but so did confusion. There were no demands, no destruction, no threats sent to the communication towers. The only sign left behind, near both scenes, was a strange carving in the bark of the nearest trees. It was circular, made of intersecting curves and dots, almost like a map or a code. And when Elias's science officer scanned one of the carvings with a spectrometer, something unexpected happened. One of the symbols began to glow faintly, pulsing like a heartbeat. That changed everything. Rise gathered a small team, handpicked from the best soldiers and xenobiologists on the planet, and prepared to go into the jungle. They carried weapons, yes, but they also brought translators, sensors, and old-world charm bracelets, superstitious trinkets some believed protected children. As the forest canopy swallowed them, the sounds of the colony faded into silence, replaced by the low hum of strange insects and the soft crunch of moss beneath their boots. The jungle was ancient, far older than any human civilization. Trees twisted unnaturally high, with bark as hard as steel and leaves that shimmered faintly in ultraviolet. Occasionally, the team would spot movement too fast to catch, too quiet to follow. But every time they came across another of the alien carvings, it seemed fresher than the last. The path was being marked. They were being led somewhere. And as the light dimmed through the dense green overhead, Elias couldn't shake the feeling that they were not the hunters in these woods. They were being watched. Closely. After nearly 5 hours of careful trekking, they reached a place that no drone had ever mapped, shielded by cliffs and vines. It was a clearing, but not natural. At its center lay the entrance to a stone structure, half buried but unmistakably artificial. Pillars lined the entry, each carved with more symbols, some glowing faintly as the humans approached. The air here was heavy, thick with something old and electric. Elias gave the order to hold position. He scanned the area with his personal device and got something strange, not just signs of energy, but life. Multiple life forms inside. None of them human. And yet one small signal matched Kara's biosignature. It was faint but steady. She was alive. As he stood there staring into the dark passage of the ruin, Elias felt the weight of something shift not in the ground, but in the air around them, like the forest itself had taken a breath. Whatever they were about to discover in that ancient place, it was not just about a missing child anymore. It was about something buried deeper than bones or metal. Something that had been waiting for humans to come close enough to reveal itself. The forest stood like a silent giant, ancient and unmoved, as if it had seen 100 species come and go without ever revealing its secrets. Commander Elias Riz stood at the mouth of the ruin with his team behind him, every person tense, alert, and aware that this mission had changed from search and rescue to something far stranger. The faint signal from Kara's bioscanner still flickered on his wrist device, coming from deep inside the stone structure, steady but distant. The walls of the entrance were covered with markings that glowed faintly when anyone stepped closer, not enough to light the way, but enough to send chills down the spine. The carvings seemed to react to presence, like they were watching or waiting. Rise took a careful step forward, motioning for the others to follow, and they entered a narrow hallway that led underground. The air grew cooler, heavy with dust and something older, something that smelled like time itself. The lights on their helmets cut through the darkness, revealing murals along the walls that stopped the team in their tracks. Expecting symbols of war, violence, or alien conquest, what they saw instead was shocking paintings of human children, drawn alongside the insect-like beings, the same species believed to have taken Kara and Ren. But the scenes were not violent. They showed communication, play, learning. In one, a child and a creature were touching hands. In another, the creature bent down and offered something glowing to a group of children who smiled in return. The murals looked ancient, worn by time, but unmistakable in meaning. It was impossible humans had only arrived on this planet 30 years ago. How could these pictures show human children? One of the scientists, Dr. Mara Yoon, whispered that perhaps the species had been watching humans long before they landed here. Maybe they had been observing Earth for generations. But why? Why children? And why take them now? As they moved deeper, the ruins opened into a wider chamber with a high domed ceiling and massive stone tablets lining the walls, each carved with more strange text and glowing lines. In the center of the room was something even stranger, a device, shaped like a flower made of crystal and metal, pulsing with soft energy. Elias reached out carefully, and as his fingers touched it, the room came alive. Light surged through the carvings, and a low hum filled the chamber. Then, without warning, the walls began to project images, moving ones. A form of communication, a memory. The humans watched, frozen, as a story unfolded before them in glowing air. The alien species, once many in number, living in great cities beneath the forest, had encountered something deadly, an invisible sickness in space, a radiation from a broken star that twisted their minds and bodies when they traveled through wormholes. Adults could not survive the jumps. Their cells broke down. Only their children had a chance. But even their young had limits. Then the images shifted. Earth appeared. Humans. Children laughing. Running. Learning. The aliens had discovered that human children had something their species had lost: a resilience in the brain, a kind of flexibility that allowed them to adapt to travel between worlds safely. They hadn't come to steal or harm. They'd come to ask for help, but they didn't know how. They tried to speak in dreams, in symbols, through old Earth frequencies, but were never heard. So, they came in person, hoping the children would understand what adults could not. Elias's heart pounded. Kara hadn't been taken. She had gone willingly. That's what the footage hadn't shown. The creature had reached out, and Kara had stepped forward on her own. She had seen something in it. But still, why not explain this to the colony? Why leave the parents in terror? As if answering that thought, the projection showed another vision, humans reacting with fear, weapons drawn, ships attacking unknown species before questions were even asked. The aliens had learned to hide, to protect themselves, until they found the right moment, the right child who would listen. Rise looked around at his team, their faces pale, a mix of awe and confusion. Then his wrist device beeped. Kara's signal was moving. Not away, but toward them. Fast. Everyone turned, weapons half raised, as footsteps echoed down the stone corridor they had come from. But what entered the room wasn't Kara. It was the alien creature, the same one from the drone footage, its tall frame bending under the archway, light bending around its limbs like liquid. Behind it was Kara, alive, unharmed, and smiling. Her eyes lit up when she saw Elias. She ran forward, wrapping her arms around his waist. She spoke fast, words spilling out like an overflowing river. She said the creature's name was difficult to say, but she called it Sahar. She said it had been showing her a different world, teaching her about the Exilari, the alien race who lived hidden under the forest. They were dying. Not from hunger or war, but from being unable to travel far enough to find a new home. Their technology was broken, their young few, their hope almost gone. And now, with human children's help, they had a chance. But they needed trust. Elias knelt to her level, asking if she was afraid. She shook her head. She said Sar had shown her pictures, let her speak through thoughts, and she had seen their history, their pain, and their kindness. She wasn't afraid, but she was worried. More children were coming, and the adults wouldn't understand. Rise stood, his mind racing. This was bigger than he had imagined. Not just an alien mystery, but a possible alliance, something that could change everything humans knew about space travel, biology, and trust. But before they could leave, the ground suddenly shook. A deep rumble came from the far wall of the chamber. The stone began to crack, and through the fracture came a sound like a scream without words. Sire stepped protectively in front of Kara. The humans raised their weapons, unsure of what was coming. The alien looked at Elias and sent one final image into his mind. Not all the Exilari had survived the sickness untouched. Some had changed, become dangerous, and were drawn to human presence in ways that weren't peaceful. This wasn't just a rescue or a meeting anymore. Something else had awakened, something that might not care for peace or understanding. Elias gave the order to move quickly. They had the child. They had answers. But now they had a new question to face. What had they disturbed by entering this place? And were they already too late to stop it? As the deep rumble faded into an eerie silence, Commander Elias Rise tightened his grip on the pulse rifle slung across his chest. But his mind wasn't focused on weapons. It was trying to understand what exactly had been awakened beneath this ancient ruin. Kara stood beside the alien creature she now called Sahar, her hand resting calmly against its strange shimmering arm, as if it were a trusted guardian rather than the terrifying figure that had once stolen her from the edge of the festival. Around them, the chamber was shifting, not collapsing, but opening. A section of the wall slid back without sound, revealing a spiral ramp leading downward, dimly lit by glowing lines running through the stone like veins. The moment felt heavy, not just with mystery, but with something greater, like they were stepping into a forgotten part of the universe. Elias glanced at his team, gave a silent nod, and they descended, Sarah leading the way with Kara beside it, her steps confident as if she had already walked this path before. As they moved deeper, the temperature dropped and the air grew thinner, but the path widened, revealing more murals, newer ones, showing human children standing in what looked like alien learning chambers, their minds linked to Exilari technology. The scenes were incredible, almost impossible to believe, but the details were too precise to dismiss as fantasy. Dr. Mara whispered that these weren't old memories. They were projections of the future, plans the Exilari hoped to make real. At the bottom of the spiral, they entered a vast hall, unlike anything the team had ever seen. It looked like a star map had been carved into the ceiling, glowing softly, and in the center of the room stood a tall circular device, slowly rotating, filled with light and motion, as if a small galaxy was trapped inside. Before anyone could ask questions, Sar reached toward the device and a surge of images flooded the room, not on walls this time, but directly into their minds. For a few seconds, no one spoke, stunned by the clarity of what they saw. Elias felt like he was dreaming, yet fully awake. The Exilari had once been a great civilization spread across multiple star systems, peaceful explorers and scientists who mastered travel through wormholes, able to jump across galaxies in moments. But centuries ago, they encountered something at the edge of known space, a dying star releasing a wave of unstable radiation. It wasn't deadly in the usual way. It didn't burn skin or destroy ships. It affected the brain, the DNA slowly twisting how they thought and how their bodies worked. The elders tried to shield the young, but over generations, the damage worsened. Some Exilari went mad. Others turned violent or silent. Their ships broke down, their colonies went dark, and only a small group, protected by ancient technology buried beneath New Geneva, survived. But even this sanctuary was failing. Their only hope was to use wormhole travel again, but it would kill them. Then they found humans. Not just any humans, children. The Exilari discovered that young human brains had something unique, a kind of mental flexibility and adaptive neural structure that allowed them to survive wormhole jumps without mutation. They watched Earth from afar, studied the languages, learned to mimic them in dreams, in symbols, in stories passed through broken transmissions. But their attempts at contact failed. Humanity was afraid, always armed, always suspicious. So the Exilari waited. And when humans finally came to New Geneva, they came close enough for the Exilari to reach out. The children were not taken by force. Sar showed them the truth. Kara had been shown the need and had stepped forward without fear. Ren had done the same. The Exilari had never meant to hide forever. They just didn't know how to explain something so big to a species that always looked at strangers with guns first. Elias felt his hands tremble. The weight of this truth was overwhelming. Humanity had misread everything. These weren't monsters, they were survivors. Kara stepped forward now, and with Sahar's help, showed something even more stunning. Using the rotating star-like device, she demonstrated a memory-sharing method the Exilari used, like a mind bridge that allowed thoughts, emotions, even ideas to be passed directly from one being to another. When Kara placed her hand on the device, and Sayar did the same, the room filled with soft light, and Elias suddenly saw through her eyes the first time she met Sar, the feelings of fear fading into wonder, the way the alien had shown her dreams of stars and voices of forgotten children who once lived beneath the forest. It was like a story told without words, only feeling. And in that moment, Elias understood something more. The Exilari weren't just looking to survive. They were looking to grow, to evolve with humanity, to share their world. But there was a danger. Sar projected a final image darkness, rising from deep within the planet, from the ruined tunnels below the sanctuary. Not all Exilari had remained peaceful. Some, corrupted by the sickness, had turned into twisted forms, violent and hungry for energy and life. They had been sealed away long ago, but the recent movements in the ruins, the humans walking these halls, had disturbed the balance. The cracks in the walls, the scream they heard earlier, it was a warning. Something was waking. And now that they had found Kara and the others, they had found fresh energy to feed on. The room fell quiet. No one moved. The team understood the choice before them. They could return to the colony and call for ships to destroy the ruins, to bury everything in fear, or they could protect this fragile beginning of peace, stand with the Exilari, and prepare for what might be coming from below. Elias looked at Kara, her small face calm, wise beyond her years, and made a decision. They would not run. Not this time. He ordered the team to set up a secure perimeter. They would send a message to the colony, not one of warning, but one of truth. Let them see what the Exilari had shown them. Let them hear the story, not through reports, but through Kara's own voice. And as the lights of the star map above began to shift, forming a new pattern, Elias realized this was more than a mission. It was a turning point not just for the colony, or even Earth, but for the entire future of two species trying to meet in the dark and find a reason to trust the light. The message that Commander Elias Rise sent to the colony was not one of fear, but of truth, and as it traveled through secure military channels toward New Geneva's main base, he knew there would be panic, disbelief, and maybe even anger, but he hoped there would also be understanding. In the depths of the alien ruins, surrounded by the mysterious and ancient technology of the Exilari, his team stood not as soldiers anymore, but as witnesses to something bigger than any war or peace treaty. They had seen the faces of a forgotten race, not as enemies, but as people different, yes, strange in form and language. Sar, the alien being who had protected Kara, now stood with Elias and his team as an equal, communicating in brief images and emotions that formed more clearly every hour, thanks to the mind bridge system powered by the glowing star core at the center of the hall. Kara, with her calm presence and clear voice, had taken the role of a link between the two worlds, and though she was still a child, she carried the strength of someone far older, perhaps because she had seen what no one else had: the full truth of the Exilari. They weren't invaders. They were the last hope of a civilization that had been hiding and healing for generations. But not all humans believed in peace so easily. As expected, the first response from the colony came through a coded channel, filled with warnings and orders: return immediately, secure the alien, isolate the child. Elias ignored them. He knew they didn't understand yet. So he sent the memory bridge recording, letting them feel what Kara felt, letting them see what she saw: Sahar's memories, the ancient cities beneath the planet's crust, the rise and fall of Zellery science, and the sickness that destroyed so many lives. He knew it would take time, but time was a luxury they no longer had. Because while they tried to build peace, something else was moving. The corrupted ones, the dark forms of Exilari twisted by radiation and madness, had sensed the energy being used in the star core. The barrier that held them underground, far beneath the lowest tunnels, was weakening, and Elias felt the vibrations in the stone growing stronger every hour. The air inside the chamber had changed to colder, heavier, as if something beneath them had started to breathe. The ground trembled once again, and faint sounds echoed through the passage they had first come from: not footsteps, but scratching, crawling, as if claws were dragging across the stone. Sar warned them through images: sharp flashes of twisted limbs, glowing mouths, and empty eyes. These creatures were once Exilari, but now only hungered for energy, life, light, thought itself. They did not build or speak. They only took, and soon they would come for the humans. But instead of fear, Elias saw something else in Sayer's glow: determination. The Exilari would not run this time. They would fight beside the humans. An alliance, not in words, but in action. So Elias ordered the team to prepare. They weren't going back to the colony empty-handed, nor were they leaving Kara behind. They would defend the star core, protect the link between the two species, and give the colony time to understand what was really happening. With the help of Sahar and the surviving Exilari, who slowly emerged from their hidden chambers, more of the alien structures activated. Walls unfolded into defense stations, energy shields blinked to life, and strange, elegant weapons powered by light and magnetism were handed to Elias's team. They didn't fully understand the technology, but it felt alive in their hands, responding to thought and emotion, unlike any weapon they had ever known. And then the attack began. It was silent at first, just the sound of cracking stone and a foul wind that carried a scent of rotten decay through the lower halls. Then came the shadows, moving unnaturally, like smoke with teeth, crawling along the walls, faster than any man could run. The corrupted ones didn't speak or scream. They just came. Elias gave the order to hold the line. The team fired the alien weapons, and streaks of light cut through the darkness, burning away the twisted forms. The Exilari joined the fight, their bodies moving with grace and speed, not with rage, but with focus, as if they had trained for this moment for centuries. Kara stayed near the core, surrounded by a protective field, helping Sar keep the mind bridge stable. Through it, she sent instructions, memories, and even bursts of calm that helped the defenders keep their minds clear, because the corrupted ones didn't just attack the body, they tried to twist the mind with fear. The battle felt endless. For every twisted creature destroyed, another one crawled through the cracks. But then something changed. The colony responded again, not with orders, but with support. A new message came through, not from generals, but from parents, scientists, and even children who had seen the memory recording. They had felt Kara's truth. They believed. Reinforcements were coming. Ships launched from orbit, and teams of researchers prepared to land with peaceful intent. The alliance had begun, not in a meeting room, but in fire and light. With new strength, the defenders pushed forward. Sayer and Elias fought side by side, one with alien blades of energy, the other with a human-built rifle enhanced by Accelari tech. And when the star core glowed brighter than ever, Kara sent a final signal through the bridge, a pulse of unity, memory, and emotion so strong that even the corrupted creatures paused, confused, as if remembering something they had lost. In that moment of hesitation, the team struck hard, sealing the cracks, reinforcing the energy fields, and finally, with SAR's help, activated a deep system within the ruins, a cleansing wave of light that pulsed through the lower levels, driving the corrupted ones back into the shadows. Silence returned, and the ruins glowed not with warning, but with peace. Elias looked around at his tired team, at Sayer, at Kara, and realized what had just happened was more than a fight. It was the first moment of real trust between two species. The alliance was real now, forged in the darkest hour, and though many challenges still lay ahead, explaining everything to Earth Command, ensuring safety for both humans and Exilari, and preventing future threats, they had made the first impossible step. Together, the revelation had become action, and now action had become alliance. And deep inside, Elias knew this was just the beginning. When the final echoes of battle faded and the glow of the star core returned to its calm, steady light, something in the silence felt different, not just relief, but a strange anticipation, as if the planet itself was holding its breath. Elias Rise stood near the center of the chamber, staring up at the swirling lights above, but his mind wasn't on victory. It was on what they had discovered, what they had survived, and what it all meant. The alliance between the humans and the Exilari was no longer a fragile hope but a living truth, proven through fire and blood. But now they faced something even greater than battle, the full understanding of what the Exilari had uncovered. Deep within the heart of the star core was not just memory or energy, but a vault of ancient knowledge, sealed long ago by the first Exilari scientists who had realized too late that their greatest discovery might also become their greatest danger. It was Kara, still linked to the mind bridge, who first sensed it, an awareness buried inside the data, something intelligent, watching, waiting. With Sayer's help, they unlocked the final layer of the core, and what they found was not a weapon or a secret machine, but a message. Not just from the Exilari, but from something far older, something not even the Celery had created. The star core, it turned out, was not of Exilari origin at all. It had been found half-buried under the planet's crust millennia ago, still active, still pulsing. The Exilari had built their sanctuary around it, believing it to be a gift, a source of energy and wisdom. But the truth was much more shocking. The message, once translated, revealed that the star core was a beacon, left behind by an unknown civilization from the edge of the universe, an ancient race that had once crossed galaxies in a single breath, who had watched species rise and fall like waves on the shore. They had created the core to search for minds capable of evolution, of empathy, of union between species. The core had waited, slept, and finally, on this strange, quiet world, it had been found by both Exilari and human. It had chosen them both. The core had been guiding Kara since the moment she stepped into the forest that day. It had called her because she was the key, not because she was special in strength or power, but because she was open. A child, yes, but without fear, able to see Sar as a person and not a monster, to hear instead of just react. She wasn't the weapon the colony feared. She was the bridge the stars had been waiting for. When the truth was shown to Elias and the others, they didn't speak for a long time. The knowledge was too big. Humanity had thought itself alone at the top of evolution, always fearing the unknown, always preparing for war. But now they saw a different path, one where trust, connection, and understanding were not weaknesses, but the very traits that could lift a species beyond its limits. The beacon began to pulse faster, and Kara stepped forward, placing her hand once again on its surface. This time, the light did not spread only through the chamber it went up, beyond the ruins, into the sky, into orbit. A signal. An invitation. And somewhere out in the stars, something answered. A distant flicker, barely noticeable, like the first light before dawn. It was coming, not an army, not an invasion, but an arrival. The builders of the core had felt the awakening. They were returning. Not in days, not even years, perhaps, but someday soon. The core had done its job, it had found what it was looking for. And now, the galaxy would begin to turn again. The humans who had joined Elias's team stood in awe, not sure whether to fear what was coming or welcome it. Some fell to their knees, some just stared. Elias himself felt like a child again, looking at the stars for the first time. But the XLR did not fear. They had lived with silence and ruin long enough. Now they would live with purpose. The ruins of New Geneva were no longer ruins. With the help of the humans, the XLR began to rebuild not as a secret sanctuary, but as a shared city, where human scientists and alien architects worked together, watched over by children like Kara, who became symbols of what both races could achieve when they listened instead of fought. News of the events spread back to Earth slowly, and while many still doubted, many more believed. More colonies joined the alliance, and for the first time in centuries, human ships traveled with alien escorts, not in fear, but in friendship. Kara's story was told across planets. They called her the Star Listener, and though she hated the title, she understood why it mattered. She had not saved the world with weapons or power, she had simply seen the truth and dared to believe in it. Years passed, but the memory of those days beneath the planet never faded. And though peace was never easy, never perfect, it held. One night, long after the alliance had begun to spread, a new light appeared in the sky over New Geneva. Not a star, not a ship, but something else, a pattern, a pulse, like a heartbeat in the sky. The builders of the core were near, and the people of Earth, and the XLR beside them, stood ready not to fight, but to welcome the next chapter of a story that had once begun with fear and ended with a truth so powerful it had shaken the stars themselves.